Shalom, this is Sophia, the Meru Khan Mariam, and we're here with a reading that I'm calling the Spiral of Fortune. And what this reading is the major angles of your chart, your ascendant, descendant, midheaven, which is the father's point, and the IC, which is the mother's point, along with your north node, south node, part of fortune or earth card, and also the first planet in your house. The first planet placement in your chart, to be more specific. So, the first placement we'll talk about is the devil card. That is your ascendant. And the ascendant is, of course, the cusp of the first house, and it represents your physical appearance, attitude toward the world, first impressions, and the mask you wear in the world. And so, with the devil card being here, it's like people look at you and they automatically assume the worst. They think that you are, doing something you're not doing, saying something you're not saying. They see and project the worst onto you. And because the ascendant is really the point that you reset to, usually this could be in your advantage because there's people out here that are doing things that are not right. And so what you can do is reset to being the enforcer, because basically the devil is the enforcer of the spiral. Death is, the reaper, like he comes to reap, but the devil is the enforcer for real, because he's got the people in chains. And so sometimes, that could be to your benefit, because you may need to actually come in as the enforcer, or at least look like it. Sometimes people will just, if you just look like you're going to enforce something, they will actually like do the right thing just because you're there. Your mere presence will force them to actually get into this whole enforcer, doing the right thing type of energy, which is very interesting. The next placement you have in your chart is, where the first placement in your chart is Pluto. And Pluto indicates your darker self and where you will meet the most challenges, control or power dynamics, death, afterlife, and transformation. So the card that you have is the King of Swords. And the King of Swords is intelligence, clever mind, and problem solver. And so if you're putting that is into a, how to look at this, it's almost like, because you can solve problems, that is going to appear to be the hardest place for you, meaning you have the devil there, which is the actual enforcer. That's followed by the King of Swords, which is another enforcer. So this intelligence, this clever mind, it's going to look, it could look like you are, claiming power that you don't have. There we go. But I don't think that's the case, because you have the enforcer card out here. You have several enforcer cards. I'm sorry, not just one, because you also have justice. So you have several enforcer cards out here. This whole, kind of row on this side, justice, the devil, and the King of Swords, these are all enforcers, So it's, when you operate, you have the right to enforce the justice, and that's going to come off looking kind of like, like you think you're better than someone, but that's just not the case. That's just who you are. This is literally in your chart. You can't do anything about that, and so it's better to just say, okay, this is just the way that I am. This is the placements I have, and I'm not going to allow somebody to tell me that I don't have the right to call down some kind of, to be the enforcer in this situation, when in fact you do. Right? You don't necessarily call the judgment, because I don't see that. Like, I don't see judgment in here, right? Because the judgment card is not here. If you were to judge, I would also expect to see the Hierophant, or the sun, the moon, the stars, something like that. You do have temperance, but that's not really judgment. That's kind of like just balancing it out. You're really like the enforcer. The enforcer, once the judgment has been called, you really, hold these people to their word. And you do that. You use justice. You got the demons and you got the sword. But you're going to hold these people to their word. That's kind of like, your energy as opposed to actually being the one who calls the judgment. I don't see that. So just keep that in mind. Your next placement is your north node, which is temperance. And the north node is what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to get to, and what is going to bring you fulfillment in your life, and what you should be trying to accomplish. And so temperance is balance, melding of disparate elements, and harmony. So you can see that this is true because on one side you have this, enforcer energy, but on this other side you have the lovers, the high priestess, which is kind of like a less serious sort of set of placements. And the goal is to balance out between the two different sides. So it's not that you only enforce, sometimes you call down the blessings, the lovers and the high priestess. You can do both. You don't call the judgment, in your case, calling the judgment is not really, that's not in your chart. But if someone does call a judgment, then you either call down the blessings or you call down the cursings. Okay? And you hold people to it. Either you hold them to the blessings with the Lover's card here, or you hold them to the cursings with the Devil card, Because there's a lot of angels, There's basically only 3 angels in the whole spiral. 4 altogether. And the one that you don't have is the one that you have to keep an eye out for, which is judgment. You have to find the person who is supposed to call the judgment, because you do not call the judgment. You just enforce the judgment. But you've got the devil, that's an angel, a fallen angel. You've got the lovers, that's a risen angel. And you've got the temperance. It's definitely a duality kind of reading. You know what I mean? Like you literally have access to both sides, and you have to use both sides. That's the other thing. Like people will say, okay, well, I've got the devil card in my chart. That's bad. I don't want to work with the demons or whatever. Well, kind of like you have access and authority to, and so you cannot feel like, oh no, I can't do this. I can't do that, this and that. That's not in your chart. You have the authority over both sides, the left hand and the right hand. And so a part of this, which is going to be helpful, is knowing the difference between the left hand and the right hand, really getting a strong sense of what's right and what's wrong, and standing firmly in what's right and standing firmly in what's wrong, and not being shook by the people who have more placements that are kind of like wishy-washy. You have a very strong right and wrong set of placements here. You don't have an all over the place set of placements. It's very strong. And so you have to be able to really work one side or work the other side as needed, and not, be nervous about working one side or the other. Okay, so the next placement you have is your IC, which is, of course, the mother's point, as I call it. And the IC is the point that represents your private life, home, and family. It's hidden from the world. You share it only with your closest loved ones. The IC is where you come from, and it's your roots. And so this is literally the mother's placement for you. And you have the high priestess. Now, something I'm still putting together with this is that the high priest is literally the daughter of the Most High. It's literally the hidden daughter who has been never discussed in all of history, basically, who is now coming into herself at this time. And this is the placement that the mother gave you. So the high priestess is intuition, revelation, inspiration, discretion, psychic gifts, a woman of power, and a teacher. So this goes right along with the first four placements. You are the one who has the power to work both sides. As you can see in the picture of the high priestess, you have the Boaz and the Jobin, which is, the pillar of severity, the pillar of mercy. And then you have the middle path, which is the high priestess who walks down the middle, doing what needs to be done, using these sort of moon symbols as a way of protection. And so it's very, very important for you to know that this is, using your intuition, using your discretion at the same time is really going to be important. You want to be able to really determine what's right and what's wrong. I mean, this is really about you really having a firm grip on what is right and what is wrong, and really leaning into that and not, again, like I said, wavering. So the next placement you have is your descendant. And the descendant is, it represents the qualities you don't recognize in yourself, what kind of partner you're attracted to, and your other half. And so in this case, you have the Lovers card, okay? And so, here we go. The Lovers is a choice between two paths, sacred or profane, love versus duty, good versus evil, the contradictions and duality. Okay, so when it comes to like relationships with people or with, even personal relationships, it's always going to be a choice between two. But because you have this high priestess placement, and also the devil placement on the other side, and it's justice placement, really, you could do both. You know what I mean? You can have one set of friends that's like this, one set of friends that's like this. You could talk to one person who's like this, or another person who's the total opposite. You're not really stuck into this mold of like, you have to be surrounded by one group of people. And the reason that is because with this high priestess placement and this temperance placement, you are firmly rooted in what's right and what's wrong. And so the reason you can be around all these different groups of people is because, whatever's right is right and whatever's wrong is wrong. And you don't get it confused. The point with this placement is to make sure that you don't get it confused. Like, to really know this is right and this is wrong. And that's something that takes time because you do have this devil placement, it's like you can be easily, not necessarily easily, but you can be swayed into thinking something is wrong that is right, and something that is right is wrong. So you have to be careful not to really know the difference, and to lean on people who have the strengths that you don't have. For example, the Judgment card, the Hierophant, even people who have kind of like the Empress, that kind of like older, woman who could help you understand, make sure that you're staying on the proper path. You know what I mean? Because it really is going to be a choice between two paths, and you don't want, because you have the angels and the demons that are sort of there, you don't want to choose the left hand path when you're supposed to be choosing the right hand path, and you have to make a decision from very young to choose the right hand path. I'm not going to beat around the bush. You don't want to choose the left hand path. There's a lot of karma that comes from choosing the left hand path. It doesn't mean that you don't use the left hand path. That's a difference. You can choose the right hand path and still use the left hand path. That's how you want to think about that kind of placement. Okay. So the next placement you have is your South Node, which is the Eight of Cups in reverse. And the reason that I put the Eight of Cups, the reason I put the South Node in reverse is because it is the challenge that is going to come up for you, basically every year right around your birthday. This is the challenge that will come up, your South Node. And it pretty much stays like that for a long time. And so this is a card that's actually inside the wheel because it is close to you. It's not something that's way out there, whatever. It's really, really close to you. And your particular placement is the Eight of Cups. And the Eight of Cups in reverse is fear of loss, poor timing, and uncertain future. So this is why it's important to have a firm grasp on what's right and what's wrong, because your challenge is always going to be determining what is right and what is wrong, and making sure you have to constantly double check, triple check yourself, make sure that what you're doing is right. You cannot, I would not recommend going into a position where you think you have the answer, because that's not in your chart. Like, it's you having the answer is not there. You really, it really is better to rely on people who have a different set of skills than you on the right hand and on the left hand to make a particular decision. Because when you get into this whole, this hermit energy, which is what we'll talk about next, that is really going to activate, it feels like, this King of Swords energy, right? Because those are kind of like across from each other, which is going to be, in this case, it would be more kind of like, making these decisions when it's not really for you to make the decision, right? You really have to get into your mind. It's not really for you to make the decision. What is for you is to know what's right and what is wrong, what you'll tolerate and what you won't tolerate. But the actual making of the decisions is a little bit different. You kind of have to wait for either someone to tell you, hey, this is what, this is what this person, okay, so let's, for example, if you're talking about, like, if you're listening to some people talk about someone and, you hear a bunch of red flags of what they're talking about, right? Okay, I guess it's all right. You hear a bunch of red flags about what the people are talking about. It's not up for you to decide what, it's not up for you to make a decision. What you have to do is take a side, which is different than making a decision. You either take the side of the person who's wrong and you say, well, that person is wrong, and I'm taking their side, which is, sometimes you do have to take the side of a person who's wrong for other reasons. Or you take the side of the person who's right and you say, no, this person is right because X, Y, and Z. You don't really make that decision, but you have to take a side. You know what I mean? It's a really weird experience, and I don't think that it's necessarily easy to do, but that's what the back and forth, once you're able to get to a place where you can do that, it will be much easier for you. Let me put it that way. And up until that point that you make that decision where you're standing on the side of right or you're standing on the side of wrong, for whatever reason, it's better for you. Not that you call a judgment and not that you make the decision. You just say, okay, this is right and this is wrong. And so for an example, why would you stand on the side of someone who's wrong? Well, if the person is wrong in general, but they did it for a good reason, you may stand on the side of the person that's wrong. And if the person is right, but they did it, it's about the intention. There we go. If they did it with bad intention, you may stand on the side of the person who's wrong. Again, you may not stand on the side of the person who's right if they did it with bad intention. And that's where you have to kind of be able to draw the line. It's not about something, it's not about what the decision is, because that's the judgment. You don't do that. It is about why they did it. We've got a lot of, factors, like just in your chart. You have the devil, you have temperance, you have the high priestess, you have justice. These are all kind of like factors, right? And so intention is going to be what makes the difference between a good factor, a right factor, and a wrong factor. And you just want to make sure that you are not calling down a judgment, but you're standing on the side of right or wrong based on the intentions. Because if not, you have this Eight of Cups that's always going to be trying to, put you into the feeling of fear of loss, poor timing, and uncertain future. You know what I mean? Instead of, being in the position where you just chose to walk away. Because in the upright, the Eight of Cups is new future and walking away. So either you have a new future on the right hand side, or you're walking away on the left hand side. You know, you did it's only one of two options when it comes to you. It's not a bunch of stuff that's all over the place. It's literally only one of two. So you know, when you're able to naturally be into that energy of, okay, it's only one of two options, and whatever option is right, you know, whatever intention is right is the one that I'm going to, the one that has the best intention is the side that I'm going to be on, which is interesting. Your next placement is the part of fortune, which I call the earth. And basically this is kind of like a bonus position that the part of fortune, it indicates where you will have luck, what energy you can go into to have luck. And I also look at it as an additional point of reset. Like if you have to reset to a position, this is where you could also naturally reset, or you will, or you have naturally reset to. In this particular position, you have the Hermit card, which is journey towards secrets revealed, willful intelligence, enlightenment, the inner life, or pilgrim. So it's basically like going on the inside. So to keep out of this making using, you know, your intuition to pick a side of right or wrong, sometimes it's best to not pick a side at all and go into hermit mode where you're not involved. And that's an option. That's a is a very viable option, to not have an opinion. You know, everybody wants to force you to have this whole spiral. For you is about forcing you to take a side. And sometimes you can just say, I'm not involved in this. This has nothing to do with me, and I'm not involved in it. That is also extremely valuable for you to utilize and to understand. You do not have to take a position at all. Nobody said you had to participate. You can choose not to participate. Now, I would not do this for too long, because you have the angels and the demons, and they'll get out of balance, and it'll be a lot. But if it's when it gets overwhelming, it's always best to retreat into hermit mode and just say, okay, well, I don't have a position right now. I'm gonna reflect on this on the inside, because even in the card, you see that there is a old man with a star in a cage. He's reflecting on what he has. He's not freeing it, but he's also not hiding it. He's just reflecting on it. And sometimes it's best to just reflect, especially when it's a situation where it's a lot of different moving pieces. You may need to just reflect on it in order to understand what is going on best. Otherwise, you can make decisions that aren't yours to make. You can take sides that are you know, it's going to be difficult for you to stand in the side that you choose, and you don't want to get into that energy. It's always best to you know, this would be a good point to reset to, because it's a neutral position. There we go. It's a neutral position. So I would personally, if I had a point to reset to, I would reset to hermit mode, which is just kind of like not involved, you know, and say, okay, I can't draw a decision right now based on the facts, or I'm not going to draw a decision aside, a right or a wrong based on the facts. And you can choose. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to pick a side. It's just that your whole life is going to be pushing you towards picking a side. And you could just say, I'm not picking a side. And that's it. That's it. That's all. Doesn't matter what anybody says. I'm not picking a side. Okay, so the next placement that you have, the last placement we're going to talk about is the MC, which I always call the father's point. And the MC represents worldly success, your public image, career, authorities. The midheaven is what you grow towards in life. It's the highest point that you get to. This is, along with your north node, what you're trying to achieve. So remember, your north node is temperance. And then this point, the midheaven point, is justice. So these two things are related. This is why I said you want to pick the right hand path. You know, the left hand path, you know, it's not really a path you don't want to live in the left hand path. You want to use it, like I said, because the justice card, you want to use it when it's necessary, but you don't want to get into it where you're just living in that left hand path, right? And so we have the justice card here. And justice is balance, law, harmony, fairness, responsibility, a judge. So literally, it is on you to judge a situation, but not to call the judgment. Meaning, you hear both sides, and like I've been saying throughout this whole reading, you say which one is right and which one is wrong. It's not that you're calling down the judgment, which is different. That's an enforcement. That's a not enforcement. That's an emotional position. This is a very this reading is there's not like super huge amount of emotions here, right? You know what I mean? It's no like it's not really an emotional reading. It's a very black and white, either or, right or wrong, perfectly balanced type of thing. You're not going too deep into this whole emotional thing, except to go on the inside and work on yourself, your own emotions on the inside without calling judgment. But this justice card is just really reinforcing the fact that you want to bring things into balance. The reason that you have access to both is so that you can balance out the side that is out of whack. And that's where the intentions come in, because if someone has bad intentions, right, they are out of whack. They are out of order, and you are the one who brings the order back. Especially with this temperance placement, you bring the order back, and sometimes you use the left hand path to bring the order back, and sometimes you use the right hand path to bring the order back. It depends on the situation, but you are the one who is trying to bring everything back into order, bring everything back to its balance point, where you have this perfect balance between right and wrong, which is the middle path. So that's the high priestess, the middle path, the temperance, having both the devil and the lovers, really bringing things back to even. And sometimes you have to actually and enforcing it. That's the other part of it, because the justice is across from the high priestess. You will have to enforce it. And like I said, enforcing it could be using the left hand path, or enforcing it could be using the right hand path, but you will have to enforce it nonetheless. Right? So overall, you really want to, you want to use your hermit mode as your reset point, as the point where you actually reset to. And then you want to maintain the balance from that point. You don't want to, when something is, so even, okay, so for example, let's say that, you have two friends, they're talking about something, and one of them is totally out of balance with what they're saying, even if they're right. You may have to play the devil's advocate on that side when you're talking to them, you know, because that's the only way to bring them back into balance. Just like if somebody is talking about something and they're way too negative, you will have to go in with that positive, scriptures and stuff like that, and bring them back to balance. That is how that's how I would view that. So really kind of like counseling people, mental health kind of things, where when somebody's way too negative, you bring them back to positive. And when somebody's way too positive, you play devil's advocate, and you bring them back down to reality, back down to a balanced position. So like counseling, or even life coaching, some kind of, different kinds of therapy, things like that might be useful for you to engage in. Definitely not allowing people to do things that you know are wrong. Or that they are doing, the reason they're trying to do something is wrong. It's not even what they do, it's why are they doing it. If you know that they're doing it for a reason that's really wrong, you have to say something. You cannot just let people just do stuff that you know is wrong for a reason that you know is wrong. Like, no, that's a really bad position to be in, and I don't recommend that. You know what I mean? Like, I really recommend, when you see somebody going way off track, you need to say, I'm not really sure that this is a good idea, because, and you take the devil's advocate. You can either play the devil's advocate, or you play the angel's advocate for them. And that's what I recommend. And then, of course, when this energy gets too overwhelming, you can reset into this hermit energy, right? Which will allow you to really reset well and not be too overwhelmed on either side. So this is your reading. I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope this makes sense. And we'll see you in the next video. Shalom.